Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Musician's Mentor podcast. I'm your host, Travis Mark, and I feel so privileged to say that today I get to talk with Paul Durham. Paul Durham is the singer-songwriter/producer for the band Black Lab, who I know might not be a household name, but I promise you've heard their songs, whether you realize it or not. This guy has been one of my favorite singers and songwriters for, I don't want to exaggerate, but I guess I would say almost 2 decades. So the fact that I got to talk to him was a real privilege. Look, the bottom line is this. Paul Durham is an incredible songwriter. So even if you haven't checked him out, you've got to check him out. I'm not going to keep hyping this up. Let's just get straight to the interview. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're enjoying these, please leave us a rating or review. But without further ado, the one and only Paul Durham. All right, Paul Durham of Black Lab. Thank you so much for joining us on the Musician's Mentor podcast.
You're welcome, Travis. How you doing?
I'm very good. How are you?
Pretty good.
Good. We're going to jump straight into it, and it's always a bit random to start because what I do with every guest is I ask them to do their own introduction. I obviously will do an introduction post the interview.
Okay.
Basically, let's start with you telling us who Paul is, some of the things you've done, what you're currently up to, etc., etc.
Okay. My name's Paul Durham. I'm the singer, songwriter, and eventually producer for the band Black Lab. We had a record deal on Geffen in the late 90s, a couple of top 40 singles, top 10 rock and alternative tracks. And then Geffen basically went out of business. So we went over to Sony and signed a deal with Epic there. And then they went out of business. And so I've just been self-releasing. I got that record back that we made at Sony, and I've been self-releasing music for the last, 25 years, I guess. So, yeah. And now I just work at home. I have a studio. I write songs. I record them. And I have agents that find film and TV and commercial placements for them. And then I just release them to my small, passionate fan base. So, yeah.
Extremely passionate fan base, which we'll talk about a little bit further in the interview. But let's backtrack a little bit. Obviously, you're, in my opinion, an incredible songwriter. I'm sure there's many others out there that agree with me. But let's talk about band activity. How did you first get involved with playing in a live band? And were you always the primary writer in those bands?
I was. I started out, literally in 1993, I started my first band. I got out of college and had written a bunch of songs and have recorded them, and then my buddy was like, well, we got to put a band together. So I've always been the main kind of driving force. My first band was called Durham, and it was just back in the day when you had to have a major label or some kind of label to put your song, your records in stores so that people could buy them and listen to them, could buy their way onto the radio, etc. There wasn't much else of an option. There was no going viral. So, so yes, that's the long way of saying yes.
That's great, man. So let's fast forward a little bit. You get to 95, you start Black Lab in Los Angeles, as far as I remember reading.
No, in San Francisco.
In San Francisco. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose let's sidetrack here for a second. I'll come back to this question. How did you end up in Montana?
How did I end up in Montana? Well, the first time I had gone on tour with Geffen, I had just been gone for a year. We were on tour for a year. I probably came home 3 or 4 times, and I was recently married. And so the second time I was getting ready to go on tour with Sony, we are actually booking a tour. We had a song coming out on the first Spider-Man soundtrack, and it was going to be the third single. And my wife at the time was like, I do not want to end up in LA, because we'd moved to LA where we didn't really have any, she didn't really have any friends. And she was like, yeah, I don't want to just be here for a year or more while you're on tour. So we had some friends in Montana. We moved up to Montana. It would be cheaper, and they had dogs and horses and kids and gardens and all the lovely things that some people like. and then Sony let go of about a third of their workforce. The head of the label at Epic, where we were signed, our A&R guy, marketing, our publicist, everyone got fired. Everyone who knew who we were got fired, and all of a sudden I was stuck in Montana. I didn't get the back end of my record deal. I didn't get the back end of my publishing deal. So now I'm about $500,000 broker than I was expecting.
Yeah.
And then I was literally stuck in Montana. I literally did not have the money to move.
Damn.
And then my son came along, and it's been a great place for him to grow up. And to be honest, I think we have this idea that we need to be in some kind of music business hotspot to really get our career going and make things happen. And 20 to 30 years ago, that was definitely true. And I just don't think that's true anymore. I roll out of bed, I go to my studio, I write, I record, I put it out online. I have a 310 area code. I still have my LA area code for my phone.
Yeah.
Probably a lot of the people that I do business there still haven't realized that I don't live there. And it's really about the quality of the music. And Montana has, as much as I hate the freaking snow, it's allowed me to focus on the quality in a way that I probably wouldn't have had the opportunity if I was living in a bigger and more distracting city.
Yeah, that's very true.
And it's also forced me to become a lot more self-sufficient.
Yeah. Yeah. Completely.
Which is good. It's good. We all have to get good at computers. It's just whether you're a accountant or whatever, you have to be good at computers.
Yeah.
And so it really forced me to get a lot better with my computer.
Cool. Okay, so I'm going to revert back to the question that I was going to ask you originally, before I got sidetracked with the Montana question. But so 95 rolls around, you start Black Lab, you sign with Geffen. Talk us through how that deal came about, and more specifically, I know you briefly talked about how the back end of that deal just kind of went down, but talk us through some of the ups and downs you experienced when signing with the label back then.
Yeah, it was a different era, right? So I had a band, my band called Durham. It was more of like a acoustic guitar driven. It had a little bit more of a Counting Crows kind of vibe to it, I guess. And so what would happen is you'd play gigs, you'd get a buzz, and then people would hear about you, and then people from record companies would fly out to see you play live. Your manager would send them a cassette in the mail, and then they would fly out to see you play live. And when they flew out to see us play live, they just didn't think the band was very good. And at some point, I was like, man, I just want this to rock a lot harder. So, so I heard Chris Isaak was looking for a new guitar player, and I was like, man, Herschel, my guitar player, would be perfect for that. So we hooked him up with that gig, and that just kind of like, and then it just all came out that my management, the producer I was working with, it was all just very small town, like not professional, not really knowing what they were doing. They just didn't know what they were doing. And I had this realization that like, oh, if you want to do the business of music, you have to be in touch with people who know what's up in the business. And those people at that time were in LA, and maybe they still are. A lot of that business has moved to Nashville, actually.
Yeah.
But so I disbanded my band, and then a guy from Geffen called me. He said, "Hey, I always hated your band. I always hated your manager, but I really like you. Let me fly you out next weekend to Atlanta. We'll make some demos." He was living in Atlanta at the time, but he was getting ready to move to LA. He had just signed someone very big and prestigious, so he was coming in with a lot of clout. We made a little acoustic demo, and I got a big ass record deal off it. It was kind of unprecedented. It wasn't like a bidding war. He was like, "I don't want any of that. I want to just sign you." And really, Geffen at the time was the premier label. For me, they were the premier major label. They were the label of Sonic Youth and Nirvana. So, and then he's like, "I need you to put a band together." I hired some guys. Actually, I hired some of the guys in Counting Crows. We did some showcases, and but then we just kind of did the deal. And then I started putting my band together, and it was great because I had this record deal, and I was able to just kind of go around and poach basically the best musicians. Like I found Jeff, my amazing bass player, and then he and I went and stole Michael Urbano from Sheryl Crow, and we actually kind of gave her our old drummer.
Oh wow.
But yeah, we went down to LA and met with him, and you could tell he was pretty bored. He had played with Cracker, he made the Kerosene Hat record.
Oh, yeah.
He's a really great drummer, and yeah, I don't know. That's I think at the time that's how bands were built. You went around and you stole the best musicians from your friends.
Yeah.
And yeah, you just wanted to build the best band, and you had a vision. Michael Urbano knew this guy Michael Belfer, who really, the thing about Michael Belfer, our guitar player, is he just didn't sound like anybody else. He had an absolutely unique sound, and I was really intrigued with the possibility of weaving a guy like that, an experimental kind of punk rock guy, into a more of a pop rock, scenario. So,
And what about some of the ups and downs for you personally as a musician? You're trying to put this band together. Obviously, that comes with challenges. Even if you did get an advance and you can pay these guys, there's always that chemistry. People don't understand how important some of this chemistry is sometimes amongst musicians. And you can find the best drummer, the best guitarist in the world, etc., etc., etc. But if it doesn't gel, and to the average person, they might know, but to the guys on the stage playing or trying to play together, So were there ever any ups and downs with that, like trying to kind of feel that chemistry, or even just like, where was your head at? You're obviously feeling, I would assume, okay, I'm not trying to take words out of your mouth, but I would assume you get this deal, you're feeling pretty good about yourself, you're starting to really come into your own as a songwriter. I mean, I've always thought you're just a freaking phenomenal songwriter, but I'm imagining at that point, the confidence levels are rising because you're getting this back in and you're getting a bit of buzz and you're getting all this stuff. But did you have any, I know nowadays they call it imposter syndrome a lot. Did you feel any of that? Did you feel any like, oh man, I don't know if I'm going to be good enough. What if my band's not good enough? Did any of that ever strike you?
I kind of had the opposite problem of imposter syndrome, which was in a way probably a bigger problem, which is I just was extremely young and very cocky, and I thought I was the greatest and that I was going to be a huge, huge rock star, which creates its own problems, because that's the way I treated people. That was just my underlying assumption. I was a workaholic. I was just confident in my ability that I could work everybody else into the ground. And that it was just like a foregone conclusion that I was going to be huge. And I looked at the bands coming up. I was friends with Steven from Third Eye Blind, from Adam from Counting Crows, and I was just like, yeah, you guys are good, but I'm going to crush you under my boot heel.
Yeah.
And when you have so that psychological attitude in a young person is always compensation, and so that just leads to its own downfall, because then when we did have setbacks, we delivered our record to Geffen, and it was pretty heavy, and I think that was not what they were expecting. I think they were expecting something more along the lines of Counting Crows, and so when they got this kind of more post-grunge record, I don't think they knew what to do with it so much, and so it didn't come out for about 6 months. They really took their time putting it out. I think you're even longer, and so that was a disappointment. It was a disappointment when the first single plateaued. It was a disappointment when the second single plateaued. And there's just always setbacks. It was a huge setback when my first band broke up, and all these major labels that had flown out to see us decided not to sign us. And then it was a huge ups and huge downs. And I remember sitting in this basement of this club with my A&R guy from Geffen, and he had said, "I'm going to get you signed." And then he went out and he's like, "Okay, I got the okay. We're going to sign you." And I was like, "Okay, I'm getting signed." And then he was like, "Oh no, I need you to put a band together to showcase for me." I was like, "Okay." So then I put a band together to showcase. And I remember sitting in this club when he said, "I'm going to have them start. I'm going to have them start writing up the contract tomorrow." It was a great show. And I had this sense of elation, and probably 2.5 seconds later, I was just on to the next thing. I was like, okay, all right, that's good. All right, what's next? What's next? It was never enough. And because I was so arrogant, I just didn't trust anybody else to manage anything, so I was always getting in my manager's way. I was always like calling executives directly. I just felt like I was smarter than my management. I felt like I needed to be dictating the vision at every moment. And I just kind of, like I rammed the third single that I wanted down the throats of the label,
Yeah.
And I just didn't have a good sense of how to work with other people. I just didn't trust other people. And I was just like, I'm going to do everything myself. And, if it was me today, knowing everything that I know, I could have done a lot of things myself. But at the time, I didn't know shit. I was just like a 25-year-old frenzied, aggressive asshole that would just steamroll his way over other people. And, it's not the best approach.
Yeah, maybe not, but also, I suppose in your defense here, the music industry is riddled with people who say they are going to do things for you and don't.
Yeah.
So at least with you having the mentality of, I need to do A, B, C, and D, and possibly following through. Okay, again, as musicians would know, sometimes trying to follow through with people more than once in this industry gets you looked at like a nag, which is super weird because it doesn't seem to work like that in most industries that actually work. But it's it's so bizarre. But anyway, in that regard, that attribute is a good attribute to have, so maybe, I'm sure looking back, hindsight's always 20/20, but you probably find, to your credit, had you not maybe had some of that follow through mentality, maybe you wouldn't be where you are today,
No, I definitely would not have been where I was, Adam had his amazing guitar player. They produced those Counting Crows demos. I don't know if you've ever heard the demos.
Big Counting Crows.
Those demos are like better than the T-Bone Burnett produced album. Some of the songs are, And Steven was a little bit older, and he had Eric Valentine, one of the foremost producers of the time, in his corner. So everyone thought Steven was a genius, and it's like, dude, Eric Valentine is making all this stuff happen. And I just didn't have anybody like that, and because I didn't have anybody like that, I was trying to compensate for it, for aggressiveness, and honestly, some of the mistakes that I made, like Steven wanted to produce our first record.
Oh wow.
And he was he was so annoying. His personality is so distasteful that we just kind of laughed him out of the room, and we really shouldn't have, because what it would have meant was that we would have gotten to work with Eric Valentine.
Yeah.
Like, Steven would have come in, he would have been around for a month or so, and then he would have basically left and gone on tour, and we could have just made our record with Eric Valentine. That would have been amazing. We had the chance to make a record with Malcolm Byrne. Kind of came in at the last moment as a potential producer. Malcolm Byrne made like this Chris Whitley record that I love, and he made this. I'm looking at a record, right? Patti Smith record that I love.
Patti Smith, yeah.
And but like the drummer didn't want to work with him because he didn't like the Chris Whitley. It's like some of my regrets are actually those moments when I didn't assert myself more. So it's just tough. It's just tough to know. But it was such a different business back then. It was so collaborative. It was fundamentally collaborative, because you needed somebody who had the expertise to call the radio programmer in Alabama to get them to play the single. Because otherwise, when you showed up in Alabama, there wasn't going to be anybody at the show. Nobody knew who we were. There was no internet. There was no way to reach out to fans or any of that. So
yeah, man, it's changed dramatically. I mean, again, people like yourself would know. I'm a little bit younger, but I've been gigging for years. The changes have been very helpful. I mean, the fact that you can make a song on your computer today and release it tonight is incredible. But I find that not to turn this into a negative light, but I find that the negative side of that comes in that now you're competing with, I think it's 75,000 songs get released a day now. And so if you don't have the money for a decent marketing campaign, or if you haven't gone viral, which, everyone seems to think that everyone can just go viral. It doesn't work that easily,
No way.
If it did, the whole world would be viral, Anyway. Okay, let's talk a little bit about licensing and syncing. I mean, as a writer, man, Black Lab have been in like everything. That's how I discovered you guys. I discovered you guys with a song called Tell Me What to Say in the movie Can't Hardly Wait, which I think came out in the mid-90s. And I was like, man, who the hell are these dudes? And I've been following your career ever since. Just think you guys are fantastic. So let's talk about licensing and what advice you could offer upcoming artists / songwriters on trying to get their music licensed, and sort of the challenges in that aspect or that regard of the music industry.
Boy, I wish I had more. I wish I had advice for people. I'm struggling with it myself. When I moved to Montana, I had no money. I didn't have a record deal. I was 31 or 32, so I was kind of aging out of major label. I mean, we tried for a year to get another major distributor, but the industry was just in collapse. People can't imagine. Before I released my first album, I used to show up at the airport. Geffen would need me to come down to take a meeting, or I'd go to New York to meet with a musician or somebody. I'd show up at the airport. There would be a chauffeur. The chauffeur would drive me to the Four Seasons. I would have all my expenses covered. And then they would fly me home. And it was like, I hadn't even made them a dime. I was just, it was just insane. So all of that had to go away, obviously. All of it was ridiculous. And, So when I got stuck in Montana with no money, I was like, well, I just have to teach myself HTML and start designing a website so that I can go out and sell CDs to my fans, which frankly was awesome for a number of years because I got to keep $10 for every CD that I put in an envelope and sent out. And, thousands of CDs at $10 a pop adds up.
Yeah, of
So,
course.
but the other thing I did is I really started building relationships with music supervisors and with my friend Lynn Grossman at Secret Road, who was building a song pitching company. So, and this was before anyone had really figured out that all the money was in sync. So we were just out there pitching songs and just getting $30, $40, $50,000 licenses left and right.
Yeah.
Because the major labels were like, there was still this attitude among bands of like, oh, we don't want to be on a TV show, or we don't want to be in a movie, we don't want to be in a commercial. All that's gone
Yeah.
now. So, but at the time, in a way, it was like, okay, you got major label quality that's without major label competition. No one was competing with us on that level, and we just killed for about 10 years. Now, everything is so designed, is specifically designed. Like all those guys that used to be in major label bands, they're in their garages making catalog at a very high level. They're making songs that are designed for a scene where a girl breaks up with a guy.
Yeah.
They're making catalog that's designed for a scene where two guys are fighting and then at the end they resolve their conflict,
Yeah.
And so when you're a music supervisor from a TV show, you don't have to comb through new music. You've got catalogs and catalogs of stuff that's already designed for exactly what you need in that show, And so trying to break into sync is really tough now because why should they pay you $10,000 for this song to be used in a scene when they've already they've already bought into a catalog where they can license any track for that scene for $200,
It's true.
And so it's really challenging. And even Lynn's company is really, really micro targeted. Her company's full of these young writers and they're super good at just churning out this very pop, very genre appropriate stuff for so honestly, dude, I don't even know, man. I don't even know what to tell you. I have my licenses have really dropped off the last few years. I think it's really just I think more and more it's about Spotify now. And I know that no one wants to hear that, but I do think that Spotify is a huge opportunity if you can figure out how to cut through with social media and targeted advertising. That's the stuff that I'm starting to look into now is how do I, and I'm lucky because I had a major label spend $1 million marketing my first album. They spent $1 million to sell a couple 100,000 copies of my first album. So I got this built-in foundation, and I have 60,000 listeners a month on Spotify that I can go and kind of tap into. And so then the question becomes, okay, how do I go get more listeners for Spotify? How do I just build that? How do I just build that every month, build my listener base, create content that is going to draw people to me, and I'm not always very good at creating content. I feel a little bit like weird because I'm an older guy creating content that feels very kind of youth oriented. But I also think that people can find their own voice in the form of social media and Spotify marketing, and that that's just part of it. I paid a heavy, heavy price for being on major labels. Uh, I had hundreds of thousands of dollars slip through my fingers, going to agents and managers and lawyers and business managers. And, my manager used to take us out to dinner, right? He'd take us out to this fancy ass dinner,
You paid for
and
it.
yeah. And then at the end of the year, we'd see it on my bill, so there was so much BS. And it's like, everyone who's in business has to pay a price.
Yeah.
If you're selling widgets, you got to do the marketing. If you're, if you're running a rental car service, you got to deal with employees not showing up and cleaning cars and unhappy customers. Like anyone who's doing anything out there is dealing with a bunch of nonsense. I know we'd all just love to, buy Bitcoin and have it go up forever, but that's just not how the world works. So the 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 nightmare of the current music business is that you have to turn yourself into a marketing machine in a way that is always projecting outward the essence of your artistry.
Yeah.
All of us as singer-songwriters, producers, like there is an essence to our artistry. There's an essence to what we do. And if we can find a way, in an authentic way, to project that essence outward into the world, then people will resonate with that. I promise they will resonate with that.
Yeah.
And I'm not good at this. So I'm not saying that I'm really good at this and you should be like me. I'm a hyper introvert. I hate this shit. But I also know that in the moments when I do it, it does resonate and my audience grows. And I see people who are so good at it, especially these young people who are just so natural at expressing themselves outwardly without, in a seemingly really authentic way, in a way that resonates with their music. And bam, people are making big money. They're making big money, so you can build a career. You can do it. But I don't know. When I was young, I worked myself to death. Okay, I've never had a band where I had chemistry. I had a band where we showed up and we worked 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for a year and a half. That's how the first record got made.
Hmm.
We built chemistry. We built chemistry. I went home every night with a DAT recording of 6 hours of our playing, and I listened through that DAT recording, and I took the crucial moments of guitar work, drum work, bass work, vocal work, and I put those on cassettes, and I made 4 cassettes for everybody, and I showed up the next day, and I handed out the cassettes. I said, this is your verse part on, that particular song, and check out these drum fills that you did here. I think they're super cool. So the arrangements got built just through sheer obsessive drive,
Yeah.
And I don't know what that would look like today. That was all work that I could do alone in my office. If the corresponding action of that is creating content, boy, I don't know if I would do it. I don't know if I could do it, but it doesn't come easy. It really doesn't come easy. I know it looks like it comes easy when you're looking at people who are having success or whatever. But if it does, I'll tell you what, if it does come easy to them, if it's just someone who's in their room and they record a little thing on their phone and they put it out and they go viral and people are getting record deals off this stuff now.
Oh, yeah.
If that does happen, you have one of two choices. You either click into absolute work machine mode and you take the opportunity and you run with it with everything you've got, or those people will be working retail in 3 years.
Well, it's an interesting thing because there's two little aspects that I'd like to touch on here. One,
mm-hmm.
I think the reason why so many, you mentioned like youth culture, I think why a lot of the youth culture, inverted commas, seems so natural at it is
Hmm.
firstly, they've had phones in their hands since they were babies.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
right.
like our generation didn't. And
No.
two, I recently heard a conversation that labels are actually having to focus on signing slightly older guys. And when I say that, I mean guys 30 and up, because a lot of
Yeah.
these viral TikTok, Instagram kind of sensation type of guys apparently have no interest in being part of that machine. They don't want to be in bands that are touring. They don't want to go through all
No.
that drama because they can make six
No.
figures by just doing a sponsored product placement. Hey,
No.
drink
And
this
good for
tea.
them.
Yeah,
Good for
and
them. Why would you want to get up at 5 a.m. to go hang out with some shock jock in Chicago who's just an idiot? You
yeah,
know, why would you want to go meet with retail people and local distributors?
yeah,
Why would you want to go and do interviews for 6 hours straight?
yeah, answering the same
Uh,
questions.
answering the same questions. It sounds very glamorous and it's pretty cool, like the first 3 or 4 times you do it. And then after that, I tell you, it's not fun.
Yeah.
Talking about yourself, saying a bunch of nonsense all day. No wonder Beck and Dylan and all these, people have just trashed that process over the years. But it's like, it's not fun, man. Everyone should go watch Meeting People is Easy, the Radiohead movie, because you see the incredible, that was Radiohead at their peak success and their lives were hell,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
If I could just stay home and make TikToks, sign me up,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. There you
Why
go.
would you do? Why would you even sign a record deal these days?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of many reasons except for possibly depending on the advance. But hey, that's just me.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
divert a little. Let's talk about your fan base. I mean, you've had
Hmm.
such success with crowdfunding. Um,
I have.
I know that your forthcoming album is basically funded through that. I know that the Black
Yeah.
Lab Unplugged album was funded through that. Um, Man, it's super inspirational to see. I know that that bands went through this phase where what was the big one called? Pledge music was a big thing. I know
Hmm.
that they're not in
Hmm.
business anymore. I know that you
Yeah.
use indie campaign. Is that
I
what it
use
is?
Kickstarter.
Kickstarter?
I use Kickstarter, and the cool thing about Kickstarter is that I love their interface, and there's a time limit. Okay, so in 3 weeks or in 4 weeks, this campaign will come to an end. This is your chance. We either have to make this number or it's all for naught, right? So that drives a certain amount. That deadline on that thing drives that. And then after after the Kickstarter was done, I think we made like 70 grand on the
Yeah, you did
Kickstarter.
very well.
And
Yeah.
yeah, Indiegogo got a hold of me and they said, "Hey, you can just port your campaign over here, and we can keep your campaign going." And the same time they sent me that message, I was getting messages from my fans saying, "Oh, I missed your campaign. Like, how do I contribute? Like, I really want to get a hold of your album." I'm like, "Dude, I've been emailing you for like the last month, twice a week. Why 24 hours after the campaign closes are now you want to contribute, right?" So I was like, "Okay, sweet." So I just ported it over to Indiegogo and I just kept it going, and which was great because I got to monetize the process of making the album. So I got to monetize it up front. I got to say, "Hey, would you like to support me to make this album? Because I've got these songs. They're really important to me, and I'd really love to just be able to focus and bring the kind of resources that a crowdfunding campaign would allow me to do." And so I did that, and then I got to monetize the process of making a record. Because when you're making a record, there's a lot of content to be generated. So and so comes in and plays on it. This is me. This is a rough demo. This is this cool drum thing I just did, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And so that allowed people to continue to participate in it, the Indiegogo. Um, and then after I finished the record and I shipped off MP3s to everybody, people were like, "Well, I want the record." And I was like, "Yeah, well, I'm working singles to Spotify. I'm trying to this new thing where you, instead of just dumping the whole album onto the distributors and then in a week it's gone." I'm working the singles, trying to build anticipation, and then meanwhile, if you want to support me and get my album, you can go over to the Indiegogo and give me give me pay some money up there and you'll get the album on MP3. So I feel like I didn't really design it that way, but I just kind of stumbled into it as a way of actually making money for the music that I'm making the way I used to on iTunes when people would buy $10 downloads and I would get to keep 7 of it, or when they would buy CDs and I would get to keep 10 of it. So yeah. Yeah, but I mean, and I mean, I'll say this about both my Kickstarter campaigns. Like I think when we started the first Kickstarter campaign, I was getting ready to quit and just go for do something else for a living.
Wow.
Because I've just been pounding my head against the wall, and it's like for all the successes I'd had. We had a few things go viral in the early years, and I had this song This Night, which was featured on
Massive.
on The Shield and House and Banshee, and like for all the success, I just felt like what I was measuring myself by was the measurement of success. Like, say if you're an insurance salesperson, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your measurement of success is that you sell probably, I don't know, 100 or enough insurance where you can net 100 or 150 grand in insurance every year, or maybe you even build a little business and you're bringing in 200 grand of a salary every year. You're a big success. If you're selling cars, you're probably making 60 or 70 or 80,000. That's a big success. But if you're a musician, the level of success that I was measuring of is, am I a household name?
Yeah.
Am I a big rock star? And if I'm not a big rock star, then I'm not successful, because that's the measurement of success in my industry.
Yeah.
And the Kickstarters really shifted that for me. The first one somewhat, and then the second one 100% shifted that for me. It's like, no, 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 no. I'm a success if I can make a living as a musician.
Yeah.
That's the definition of being a success.
Yeah.
Okay. And I talk to guys who have $100 million in the bank. And, I meet them and we talk, and for them, they're in awe of me because I make my living as a musician. All right. So, like, it's not a matter of respect or, it was just a matter of changing this thing in my mind of what success meant. And now that it's changed, my life is so much better because I don't wake up every day as a failure. I wake up every day and like, no, I got enough money to make it through the next 3, 4, 5 months. I'm successful.
That's fantastic, man.
Yeah. And so I think, being involved in media, which as a musician I was, but there's a way in which we're all involved with media. I was talking with my girlfriend the other day, and she was like, look, this is an attention economy. Okay. So when I look at Instagram, I think I'm getting something free, but actually I'm paying with my attention. I'm paying with my time.
Yeah.
I'm paying for that. And what Instagram has done is it's got all of us to go out and make TV shows for free.
Yeah, basically. You're
Yeah,
right.
we're all just watching TV all day long on our little crack pipe telephones. That we're watching each other's TV shows.
Yeah, and I mean, YouTube's gone as far as calling it a channel. So everybody's got their own channel.
Exactly. Everyone's got their own channel. We're all out there making TV. So it's like, because we're all involved in media, we all think that maybe we're not successful because we're not that like hip young thing that just went viral, or we're not Wet Leg, or we're not like whatever big new thing that just exploded out of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
Um, but the fact is it's really not how you want to measure success. There's a reason why lots of rock stars kill themselves. It's because they they were trying to they were trying to squeeze something out of their career that didn't reside in their career, like feeling at home in your skin does not reside in commercial success. Sorry.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
You're
So
right.
that's been a big shift for me, and really, like, I went from being oriented towards my success or failure, depending on how my career was going, to now I'm oriented towards my fans, honestly, which I always thought was kind of bullshit when, like, you'd hear Lady Gaga or whatever say, "Oh, my fans, it's all for my fans." I was like, no, it's not. It's, you're just saying that so that you can make more money.
Yeah.
But, like, I was just too solipsistic to recognize, like, oh no, it's all about my fans, because my fans are who makes my life possible. If I didn't have my fans, I mean, I don't know what else I would do. I'd have to go get some job that, I'm wouldn't not particularly qualified for, and wouldn't be successful at, because I wouldn't really want to do it,
Yeah.
So,
This
yeah.
is not one of my questions. Have you ever thought about what you would do if you weren't doing music?
Well, I've always had a big schism in my life, between music, which I love and I feel compelled to do, and I am, somewhat talented at, and psychological work, spiritual practice. I spent years in Zen monasteries. I lived on an ashram for a while. I have, read hundreds of books on Buddhism and Sufism and the Gurdjieff work and all kinds of other nonsense, which, I mean, it's not nonsense. I don't know what it ever got me. But, I've just always been very engaged in a kind of, examined life.
Yeah.
So probably I would be some kind of psychologist or coach. I've done a lot of coaching. I've done a lot of artist coaching. I did executive coaching for years because I had some friends sign up with me, just some corporate guys who was like, we need your small business acumen, So then I was coaching these Silicon Valley executives, which is pretty funny, because we think of Silicon Valley executives as, a senior VP as like the peak of success in our culture. And it's like, these guys didn't know how to zip their pants. They never had to learn, because they just flowed along with their corporate jobs, one to the next. They didn't know how to prioritize or build a schedule for themselves. The schedule was already always built for themselves. So that's probably what I would be doing.
Okay.
But my heart wouldn't really be in it. So my success would be very limited, like, your heart really has to be in what you're doing
I agree.
to be successful. You can't, you can't force a 16-hour workday to do something that you don't enjoy. You gotta really love it.
Great life advice, actually.
Yeah, it's like we have all these ideas about what we should be doing. Well, I should be doing this. I should be doing that. And it's like, yeah, I mean, when I was 23 down at Kinko's in the middle of the night making postcards for my mailing list, which I was going to put stamps on and mail to people in order to get them to come to my show in 2 weeks, I was on fire. I was at Kinko's in the middle of the night doing the most tedious work possible, but it didn't feel like grunt work. It felt like, no, this is what I'm passionate about. this is the next step. This is the next thing I have to do to get the thing I want.
Yeah.
And if you don't feel that way, then you're just, to me, that's what it takes to be successful. That's what it takes to be successful.
I agree.
And, not everybody feels that way. I certainly don't feel that way all the time. I don't feel that way about Spotify marketing. I tell you that much, but I do feel like that's, it's like in my mind, I know what I have to go study a bunch of Spotify marketing. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. So, but I do think that it's like, we have to measure. We have to recognize that. We have to recognize, man, there's only, and as I get older, this thing becomes increasingly true. I can't force myself to do shit anymore that I don't want to do. I used to be able to, but my capacity to do that lessens. And so it's like, okay, well, I need to plan some stuff that I actually want to do today,
Yeah.
And then maybe that will build some momentum, and I can use that momentum to get the stuff done that I don't want to do. But
and it's
I don't know.
And it's healthy, I mean, keeps you mentally happy, etc.,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Paul, I know that we're going to be running out of time soon, and I have quite a lot of questions I still want to ask you, but I'm gonna simplify here.
All right. Sorry for the
no, I love it, man. I mean, I'd keep you on the phone all day if I could. I want to respect your time, So
okay.
Okay, let's kind of push forward to the new album here for a second. You've already released 2 singles, Love Her and Right at the Wrong Time. You don't have to go into too much detail because, again, it's not that kind of podcast. But tell us a little bit about the recording process and tell us if there were any challenges with having to be so hands-on with music that you're already close to when you're acting as artist, producer, arranger, composer, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah. So this is my first solo album. Everything that I've ever done has been under Black Lab and or other bands' names. And with this batch of songs, these songs were so personal, and they were also kind of rootsy. Like they had a lot of folk and blues influences. And my collaborator in Black Lab, Andy Ellis, is not really interested in that kind of stuff. He's a much more electronic alternative guy, which is great. And so I was like, man, I just got to do this stuff myself. The problem is I'm not really a very good musician. Like my thing is writing songs and singing. But guitar, I'm surrounded by guitars here in my studio, but I'm just not good at them. I just have never, I don't know if I've ever sat there and practiced guitar for more than 5 or 10 minutes in my whole life. So building this whole thing myself was a bit intimidating, but I had been doing production for other artists who were even worse musicians than me. So I had built some confidence up that in my editing skills that I can just lay it down. And also some of the most successful Black Lab tracks, from This Night to Say Goodbye, I produced by myself in my studio. And so I was like, look, dude, you can do it. Just make this record. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's a rootsier record than I've made for a long time. It's just really focused on the songs much more than the bells and whistles of production. And, one of the reasons why I did the Kickstarter, I was thinking, I'm just going to do a Kickstarter. I'll raise 15 or 20 grand. And then I'll be on the hook. I will be on the hook.
Yeah.
I will be liable for finishing this record, number one. And number two, I will have some collaborators because I'm doing this all by myself. So I'm going to build a private group in Facebook where I'm going to be sharing my process. And if you contribute to it at a certain level, then you can come along with me on that ride. And it really was, I mean, it made it possible. There's no way I would have finished this record without people there every week in the private group cheering me on, feeling the pressure to make progress, feeling the pressure to post in the private group, the kind of things that I, as an introvert, do not feel comfortable posting on my regular social media. And that just created a wonderful synergy by which I could blast through the roadblocks of like, man, can I really just build this record with mostly drum loops? Can I really play all the bass myself?
Yeah.
Can I really just edit this acoustic guitar to within an inch of its life so that it actually sounds good? So I just had to like overcome these paralyzing artistic questions over and over and over, and yeah. So anyway, I mean, it's actually advice I've started giving people when they want to do a recording project. I'm like, make a Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I don't have any fans. It doesn't matter. Make a Kickstarter with a $500
Goal.
threshold, and if you can get 20 of your friends and family to give you $500, first of all, you'll have $500 to work with, and second of all, you will be on the hook. You will have people holding you accountable to complete something. You will have a deadline, which we all have in our lives with taxes and work and spouses and kids and stuff like that. But in our musical life, we don't have that deadline. So if you can make this artificial deadline for yourself, you don't want to live in shame that you took people's $500 and then you didn't deliver anything. So leverage that, So
Very nice.
Yeah.
Let's slightly change from the subject matter and go back to songwriting here for a second. So, I mean, I know that since you started being more active on social media, which kind of seemed to happen sort of just before lockdown, which I think it's cool. I love the little videos and the playing the song videos and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's what it all came out of. It came out of like I was locked in my house in this little tiny town, and what could I do to help the world? It was that kind of like initial lockdown moment where we're all like, God, man, there's doctors and nurses dying every day. There's people working at grocery stores getting sick. What can I do? And I was like, I'm just going to play music on the internet every day. So every day I went live and I played a song. And sometimes it was one of my songs. Sometimes it was a cover. Sometimes it was a new song. And I feel like it built a lot of goodwill, so that when the Kickstarter came around, people were like, oh man, I can do something for Paul because he's been playing online for me every day,
Exactly.
And yeah, definitely, when we get out of the what can I do to build my career and put our heads more in the what can I do to serve my fan base? What can I do to serve people around me? It has mysterious payoffs.
Yeah, and well, what I was going to go into was you've since done a couple like songwriting kind of campaigns / courses. I did the very first one you did. It was like a 5-day thing. I can't remember.
But, cool.
But that's so cool. I mean, like again, for whether they're fans of your work or not, up and coming songwriters who are trying to learn a skill, to learn from somebody who's had. Again, maybe you didn't perceive it as success at first, but who's had success and had placements and had songs on the radio and stuff, that's an amazing opportunity. I mean, I know that they do songwriting camps and things like that, but to, be in your little bedroom and play a guitar along with some guy and get some feedback and stuff, that's invaluable. So I think it's great that you do those things, man.
I think I did the first one in the pandemic just because,
that was the one. Yeah.
I had a little European tour booked, and it just went away because of COVID. And then I was like, man, I need to make some money. Like, how am I going to pay my rent? And so I did the first one, just out of like a kind of panic, I think. And then I had so much fun that I was, I really missed him when I was working on my record. So they're just super fun. As you can probably tell, I like running my mouth about stuff I know things about. So
it's excellent.
It's fun.
And people can learn, something I've said in all of my previous episodes, even the ones that haven't yet been published, is There's so much gold sort of nugget type of information in these conversations that if
Totally.
you're an up and comer, or even if you're established and just looking for a different outlook or a different perspective, if
Yeah.
you have the patience to listen to some conversations like this, you could leave
Yep.
with some tips that you maybe didn't consider. I know I do. I mean, I'm a big fan of
Yeah.
podcasts. I'm not saying that obviously because I have one, but like there's things to learn from everybody. And if people are just patient enough to accept that rather than thinking, I know we live in this now kind of society, but if you have the patience, like if someone goes and watches your even the free versions of your courses, there's
Yeah.
gold in there, man. People go and pay to study at paid
Yeah.
places to go and
Oh
learn some
yeah,
of this
it's
stuff.
crazy.
And if you're willing, all the information is out there. You just got to go and
It's all
sift,
out there.
you know?
It's all out there. Like, like for me, university is just becoming obsolete, certainly music schools or engineering schools. Like, I don't know why anyone would go to a music school. I mean, are you going to become a classical violinist? Okay, cool. Go to
Yeah.
music school. But otherwise, it's like, why would you do that? Because it's all out there. It's
Yeah.
all out there,
Every single thing.
and every single thing is out there. I mean, like if you want to learn Pro Tools, you can just watch YouTube
Yeah.
and learn Pro Tools.
Yeah.
Like when I learned Pro Tools, the only way you could learn Pro Tools is to go and sit behind somebody who was using Pro Tools for many, many hours. And that was an opportunity that most people did not have,
Yeah.
It was like this secret cabal of people who could use this magical wand. But now it's all there. So it really is just connecting to drive and passion, you know, because all the resources are there. So given the resources are there, how do you connect to your drive and your passion? Well, part of that is connecting to your drive and passion. Part of that is removing the obstacles that are in the way of your drive and passion.
Yeah.
Like I try to treat social media as a one direction channel. I am creating and I'm putting out there. If I'm on Instagram watching other people's shit, I'm wasting my life.
Yeah.
And I'm destroying my attention span, and I'm feeding an addiction, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
You're on the money, man.
so it's like, that's in the way for me. That's in the way for me. If I have an unproductive day, often I can look back at the moments when I ran into something challenging, and instead of seizing it and overcoming that challenge, I just picked my phone up. And then something else happened and something else happened. And I didn't get done what I needed to get done.
You see it more and more now as well. It's like,
Yeah.
like when I'm at gigs, I often see hypothetically a bunch of people standing together. And
Yeah.
let's say, for purpose of example, there's 5 people standing together and 3 of them are
Yeah.
talking, and maybe the other 2 aren't involved in the conversation. Out come the phones. They've become the
Yeah.
safety blanket kind of,
Yes.
well, it's okay, I don't need
Yes.
to be social with you because I've got my whole world here. And it's great that people feel
Yeah.
that they've got their world there. I'm not trying to make that negative or dispute that or anything like that. But
Mhm.
it's also quite, I don't think, or maybe they have, I'm not sure, but I don't think that the damaging effects that we're going to see coming from this in the next few
Yeah.
decades. I mean, already
Yeah.
mental illness and problems are at their heights. I mean, obviously they've always
Oh,
been a
it's horrible.
thing, but like they're way, way worse than they've ever been. And that's because, people are anxious and depressed, and they compare their life to everything because they go online and, oh, look,
Yeah.
especially on a music side of things. I mean, I'm sure in every aspect of life, but from a music side of things, songwriter
Yeah.
A goes online and songwriter B just won a Grammy, and then they go, "Oh,
Yep.
I didn't win a Grammy." It's exactly what you were talking about earlier, and it's just damaging,
Yeah, and like that example where 5 people are talking and 2 of them feel uncomfortable, and so they pull their phones out. Like, I just feel like young people are not learning how to deal. And I think I think the pandemic, my son is 18, and I mean, the pandemic just was like a wrecking ball coming through the midst of his life.
Wow.
He was in high school and all that just stopped.
Yeah.
And but my girlfriend's selling clothes, and she's like, all these she's clearing out her closet. She's like, all these young people, all these young women keep coming to the door to buy my clothes, and they can't look me in the eye.
Yeah.
They can't talk to me. They just come in and they grab the piece of clothing and they stand there and Venmo me, and then they flee.
So weird.
Yeah, and I'm like, man, you got, social discomfort,
Yeah.
boredom.
Yeah.
These are essential elements for creativity.
Yeah.
These are essential. You have to experience social anxiety. You have to be bored. I tell people in my songwriting classes, when you're driving, if you turn on music or a podcast, you're killing a creative opportunity.
Yeah.
When you're washing dishes, if you turn on music or a podcast, you're killing a creative opportunity, because those are the environments in which melodies emerge.
Yeah.
And if we're not willing to turn that shit off, and I'm not any better than anybody else at it, but if we're not willing to turn that shit off and listen to our inner movement, then creativity basically just dies on the vine.
Yeah. I concur.
You know?
Paul, what's been the hardest lesson you've ever had to learn as a songwriter/musician during the course of your career?
Just keep it simple. 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 I mean, I have a fancy degree in philosophy and literature, and I really want to impress everybody with the density and depth of my lyrics. And it's stupid. Like, I just need to write something simple that communicates from my emotional center to somebody else's emotional center.
Yeah.
And that can be really hard to just keep it simple. So, and that's my challenge. A lot of people, other people's challenge is like, well, I wrote it and it sounds good. That should be good enough. And it's like, no, it's not good enough. It's a cliche. It's shallow. It's something that other people have done 1,000 times. Like, reach deeper and find something unique to say.
Yeah.
So that's some people's challenges. My challenge is to keep it simple. Just na 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 na.
Great.
Na 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 na. Just make it simple.
Yeah. In turn,
what
would
we
that
want.
be, what do you think would be some of the best advice you would give people in regards to songwriting musicianship? Would it be the same thing?
I mean, it's interesting in my courses because people just have really different challenges. Some people are really good singers, okay? And because they're really good singers, they don't have to work very hard at their songs, or so they think. Some people are not good singers, so then they work super hard at their songs and they overcomplicate it. The thing I try to emphasize in my songwriting courses is authenticity. How do we connect with what is most authentic? And it's hard because a lot of times we're afraid. I mean, some of these songs, like Halo, this third single of mine, I'm terrified to put that shit out in the world. It's fine among my fans, okay? But it's going to be on Spotify. Anybody can listen to that shit now, And, in some level, I'm very proud of it. I think it's some of my favorite work I've ever done. But in another way, it's scary because it's just so raw. It's so authentic to me and who I am. And it took years to write that song. So, I don't know. It's not a very useful answer because how do we plumb authenticity? How do we reveal it? But that's been the hardest thing. Like, we have so many pretensions. We have so many people that we love, so many artists we want to emulate, so many, masks we want to wear to the world, so many, things we want to present outwardly about ourselves. We want to be really cool, or we want to be really this, or really sexy, or that, or that. It's like, no, that is not what people resonate with.
Yeah.
What people resonate with is when they can feel that what you're saying, what you're singing is real to who you are.
Yeah. I think it's
And
100% correct.
Yeah.
Well, Paul,
Yeah.
I want to respect your time, so I'm going to leave it there. All right, Paul Durham from Black Lab. I will leave show notes as usual in our things for all of your links, and people just go check out Paul, man. I cannot say what a great songwriter this guy is. You've got to check him out. But Paul, I need to thank you for your time. Thanks for being so generous. Truly appreciate you, man.
Well, thanks for having me, man. It was very fun.
No problem. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
See you later.
Sweet. There we are. Another one done and dusted. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Thanks for checking out the podcast. Thanks for continuing to listen to the podcasts. If you are getting anything from these, please leave us a rating or review. Check out musicians-mentor.com for more. Check out Paul. I promise you won't be disappointed. Okay, that's it for me. Keep on rocking, keep on pushing, work hard. I'll talk to you soon. Peace.